Welcome back, explorers of the past, to another episode of Bannworth Academy Ancient News, where bones speak, the soils whisper, and the ancient world is never truly gone. I'm Dr. Tiffany Bannworth, your host and your humble guide as we unearth and etch stories in time. Today, we leave the sands of the Middle East in the stone temples of Egypt, and we travel to the rugged jewel of the Irish Sea, the Isle of Man, a land rich in myth, monastic mystery, and maternal resilience. Our guest is a scholar whose expertise goes deeper than the grave goods or artifacts. She reads history in the bones themselves. And from investigating maternal health in early medieval burial grounds to identifying the lingering fingerprints of vitamin D deficiency in skeletons across the centuries, today's conversation promises insight, depth, and a window into the lives of women and families long past. Joining us today is Dr. Marie C. Weale, a distinguished human osteologist and research associate with Manx National Heritage. Her current project, From the Mouth of Manx Mothers, is an ambitious look into the maternal health of the Isle of Man between AD 500 and 1500, a time of transformation, faith, and resilience. Supported by Culture Vannin and in collaboration with Keele University, her work builds on her doctoral research into the prevalence of the vitamin D deficiency in post-medieval England. Dr. Weale's research interest spans paleopathology, paleodietary reconstruction, dental and bone histology, all in pursuit of the central question: what can the dead teach us about how we live? We're honored to have her to the show today, and we want to dive deep into a fascinating chapter of history where biology and culture intertwine. Thank you for coming today. We're so excited to hear all about your research. We actually were talking a little bit about it before we were going on air, and it is very good. Your research is very good.
Oh,
so
good.
yeah, no, that's why we and she was actually highly recommended by another scholar. So we've got at least 2 scholars' approval going in. But yes, it's wildly interesting too. And if it weren't in the interest of time, I would talk to her off camera for a bit more to hear all about her research. It's very good. So let's deep dive into some questions. You're actually our first osteoarchaeologist, so to speak, online, because normally we talk about the grave goods and the other aspects of it or the culture of it, and you're our first bone archaeologist. So this is a very interesting sidebar here. All right, here we are. What first led you into the field of osteoarchaeology, and how did your focus evolve towards maternal health in the vitamin D deficiency that we were talking about?
So I suppose kind of as all great things start, if you want to call it great, by accident.
Really?
Yeah, so I did my undergraduate degree in forensic anthropology. So in kind of UK universities, you get to the end of your second year, and then they want you to pick your dissertation topic, which you do kind of in your third year. And I couldn't pick one. So my university did like a work program where you could work in the labs over the summer, and then that contributed, and you had to do some report writing and all kinds of different things, but that basically equated to the part of your dissertation. So I was like, well, okay, let me sign up for this and get some hands-on experience, curation of collections and just so much more experience with the skeletal remains. So I did that, and as I was doing it, I found my first ever case of rickets, and I was like, oh, this is really interesting. So then that sparked me off the route of forensics, and I went and did a master's in human osteology and paleopathology. And then I was kind of chatting with some like potential PhD supervisors, and we came up with this idea of doing vitamin D deficiency, but looking at various different northern populations, so populations that would never have enough sunlight to kind of not have deficiency, and then look at their diet and see if the populations that ate more fish were less deficient. And then COVID hit and the entire world shut down, and I couldn't travel anywhere to do any kind of data collection. So I was based at the time at the University of Bradford, and they have wonderful skeletal collections. They have about 5,000 individuals spanning huge time periods. So I had to work with what they had there, because I'd already done one population, and I'd already done the collection, I'd already done the destructive sampling, so I didn't want to kind of waste that information. So I did that, and then around that time there was a lot of interest in maternal and infant health. There was a lot of stuff coming out about how we can see evidence of it in teeth, and how we can find evidence being kind of transferred from mother to infant. And then it all kind of rolled in together, and it actually worked.
Wow. And it's
which is always good.
yes, it is always good. What's funny is I actually I have a doctorate in biblical archaeology, but I started out in forensic archaeology because my goal was to like solve ancient crimes. But the local college that I went to didn't seem to have. So you followed the path that I was thinking about. My local college, I was in forensic archaeology, right? But they were trying to, instead of it being archaeology with a focus of forensics, it ended up being forensics with a focus in archaeology. So in my undergrad, I took a lot of like police classes. And so I've taken like criminology and crime scene investigation and, forensics, because they were more so trying to put me as like, so the definition here for forensic archaeology, as for the police version, is any body left to the elements more than 3 months. They call it a forensic archaeologist. But I was trying to look at like old bodies and like figure out how they died or what had happened to these people. And I ended up in like crime scenes and autopsies and stuff like that. So I swapped over to biblical. So I am that's why I think I'm also more drawn to your research too, because it touches on a lot of my undergrad too. It says here, your current project, From the Mouth of Manx Mothers, spans nearly 1,000 years of history on the Isle of Man. Well, I think we covered it, but let's just say it. What inspired this particular study?
So after I kind of finished my undergrad, again, I wanted some more experience. So I went to Manx National Heritage, which is the organisation that looks after Manx history on the Isle of Man. And I put myself down as a volunteer to work on the national collections. And they're really fabulous, and their curator is amazing. And I got involved with the Russian Abbey project, which has been fabulous. But there was two neonatal skeletons from that site that had evidence of vitamin D deficiency and vitamin C deficiency, and they're both really severe cases. And their age estimations kind of put them around that time of birth, possibly.
And did they die at birth or because of the rickets?
You can't really tell without doing kind of a destructive analysis. Kind of like one of my things is trying to minimize. As somebody who does destructive analysis, it probably makes me quite a hypocrite, but to try and minimize the damage that we do.
Right.
Because I'm very mindful of the fact that through doing this work, we need to make sure that we learn as much as possible from any destructive samples that we take, because ultimately we are destroying an irreplaceable piece of human history.
Yeah.
So you can do it, but I don't think it's worth doing it, especially not to cases that are so unique, especially that we've got an MNI of, I think it's about 275 individuals at that site, and those are the only two neonatal individuals. So it just doesn't kind of weigh it up. But it kind of it sparked the kind of the thing, that kind of goes off. And I was a bit post PhD at the time, and anybody who knows and who's kind of done one, you kind of fall out of love with it at the end. I can't quite explain it, but it's like you spend so much time putting like your heart and soul into it, and then you send it out into the world, and these examiners, they give you the best kind of feedback that they can, but ultimately, you still feel a bit run over by the process, and it's all part of learning and academia in general. And actually, one of my best friends was like, well, why don't you apply for a bit of funding and see if you can fall back in love with it? Like, the worst comes to worst, you can just give the funding back. It's not the end of the world. So I did, and we got the bit of funding, and it actually helped me fall back in love with it post PhD. Because also, like I mentioned, I did mine during COVID, And it's already quite an isolating experience. But then you add in things like not being able to go into the office every day and speak to your peers, um, not being able to go and see other people, standing in a lab for 7 hours a day on your own, and it just became so much more
Yeah.
isolated than it already is. So afterwards, it was a real kind of railroad to just take a break, and
Yeah.
uh, and eventually I found my way back to it. So that was kind of nice. You go full circle, I guess.
Well, do you know what you touched on about where you said volunteer work? We've noticed that almost 100%. I can't think of one who hasn't. Almost 100% of all of the guests on this show have applied for a volunteer position in what they ended up getting a degree in or a focus in or a specialty in. So it's very important, I think, that our students and other adults that they hear that if there's something that you're interested in, to take any position and volunteer first, and then move your way through. I live in Florida in America, and we were not closed. So like I had school open that was mask optional the whole time in 2020, and Disney World was open, so I went to Disney a lot. So
Wow.
like yeah, we were pretty open. So I and then we even had, because some public schools because we're private, so some public schools, if one person in the class had COVID, then everybody was supposed to disperse, but the parents had to go to work. So I also had like an open lab, and I used to have an old 1967 church was my campus, and we used to have like the public school students come with their computer and do their open labs. So we were just like open. We should just got you over to America so you could have looked at some skeletal remains over here. Um, let's see. So, can you share more about your role with the Manx National Heritage and what makes the Isle of Man archaeological record distinctive? And then after this, we'll take a break.
So I'm purely volunteer with Manx National Heritage. Like I work in a completely different, unrelated field, and my research currently is kind of my hobby.
Mm. But
Um,
you're born there, correct?
yeah. So
Yeah.
I am Manx, yeah. And I work on our national collections, and I also am a research coordinator for a separate organisation that also helps with kind of Manx history and stuff like that. So I also get to help other researchers and put those in contact with the people that they might want to speak to about different projects, which is also really interesting. But as kind of part of my work, I've really tried to raise the profile of Manx archaeology because we are such a small island. A lot of the time we're overlooked, and we have a huge, especially like Viking history. And I
Yeah.
remember sitting at a conference, and somebody had looked at Viking sites in Ireland, looked at sites in Scotland, they'd looked at sites in England, and they'd missed this little bit in the middle. Um, and it's been really rewarding to be able to kind of do this as a volunteer because I've been able to help researchers come from Australia
Oh, wow.
and come and look at our history, and we have a huge amount. So we have roughly it's about 10,000 years worth of archaeology, and it's not all kind of Vikings. Like they do play a big part, but we have early Christian cemeteries, we have medieval castles, we have a medieval
Mm.
abbey. And we
You
have
said that it was the oldest government in the world too, right?
Yeah, so we have the oldest government in the world, which actually has
Incredible.
Norse origins. They're everywhere, to be honest.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we have a lot of history, and a lot of the history is really well known. But the skeletons and the people who kind of built the history, they're not so well known.
Mm.
And that's kind of my thing. So I grew up in this area where, like, 10 minutes from my house, there's a Viking boat burial if you go
How
one
cool.
way. And
Yeah.
then 10 minutes the other way, there's like an amazingly preserved medieval castle. And then you go 15 minutes the other way, and there's a medieval abbey. So, like, I'm surrounded by this history, and I was like, this is amazing. But, like, who are these people? And how did they do this? And all of these things. So, I kind of came home and found, this gap. Where people weren't doing research, and with the facilitation and collaboration of Manx National Heritage, I've been able to do it, and it is really good. It's really rewarding as well, and I get a lot of really positive feedback from local people, which is also
Huh.
really nice. Um, So yeah, it's all really
And you're
good.
bringing it to the worldwide forum too. I mean, because look, I'm here in America asking you all about your research, and we have a lot of students looking into the types of stuff that you're talking about.
Trying,
Yeah.
trying.
Wow.
But a lot of people as well, they kind of group us with England, or they'll group us with Scotland or Ireland,
Yeah.
and actually
Yeah.
our historical record is quite different. There are,
Yeah.
like similarities, but like for example, our Viking period went on for I think it's about another 150 years.
Yeah. And you taught me
After.
that. It's
Yeah.
from you that I learned that.
So it's quite interesting. And
Yeah.
I've been to conferences and stuff and been presenting this work and had people put their hands up at the back and go, "Oh, your dates for the Viking period are wrong." And I'm like, "No, no, they're not. You're just not
Yeah.
considering us as independent." So it is always really nice to kind of raise that profile, especially because it's my home, so it kind of makes
Yeah.
it much more of a positive experience.
No, absolutely. That's wonderful. Well, we're going to take a few minutes. So everybody make sure that you get a drink, lock in, look, maybe you can Google some stuff that she was talking about. And then we'll be back in a flash. I'll see you in a few minutes. Hello, welcome back. I went and got a coffee, so I hope everybody has come back refreshed and ready for some super cool information. And in the next couple of questions, we're really going to get into the meat of her research, which is world renowned. We were just talking about how she was also featured on BBC, so you could also, if you want to check out more information, just Google her name, BBC, and you'll have a wealth of information. So let's see here. It says, back at it. Let's get it cracking. How has Culture Vannin and Keele University supported and shaped your research, if at all?
So Culture Vannin are an organisation based here on the Isle of Man, and they support or they offer a range of like small funding grants for projects like mine, or like different types of events, and all kinds of things. So they put up the funds basically. I
They
wrote
helped you fall read back in love, you said, right? After your
Yeah, so they offer these, and I've had two or three of them in the past as well. So, like being a volunteer, obviously you don't get access to research funds.
right.
So all the kind of testing I've had done on different sets of skeletal remains, different sites and things, I've applied for the funding myself and gotten myself.
Mm.
So they gave me one of their small grants to help fund this work. And then because I'm now independent and I don't have a kind of a research facility behind me, I have a really dear friend, Dr. Chris Arris, who's based at the University of Keele, or Keele University.
Right, right.
So I'm doing all kind of like the skeletal side of things and everything here, and then he's doing the histology and the sample side at Keele.
Nice.
So it's a really nice collaboration as well. And it means it's something that we can keep local and we can kind of keep control of, because I think a lot of the time you come into a project with the best intentions and then maybe you don't have the right facilities, or you don't have
Right.
that type of thing. And especially when it comes to like isotopes or radiocarbon dating and stuff like that, I obviously have to send the samples off to bigger institutions.
Right.
But this way it's nice, it's small, it's with people that I know and I trust, and it makes it a much nicer project to manage
Absolutely.
because of that. And it makes it much more rewarding as well. So I get the odd message with like a nice picture on that really kind of brightens the day, and it makes it a lot more fun when you work with people and you surround yourself with people who have those similar kind of like mindsets and similar interests. But also will call you out when when you don't maybe you're having a bad day. So it's nice.
Yeah, no, I like that. Do you ever think about teaching at Keele? Maybe at
I
the end
don't
of your research phase?
I don't think that they have any openings, to be honest. But
Wow.
like
You are, it
I
speaks to the
I love
culture of the island.
I love teaching. And it's the thing that I kind of miss now that I'm obviously like completely separate from the field and just research.
Right.
It's something that I do miss, but also there's a lot of change within academia at the moment within the UK. There's a lot of departments or a lot of universities kind of cutting costs, rejigging
Mm.
departments, doing all of that type of thing. But also I think when you get there, it's a lot different to what people think it is. Like certainly my academic experience, is kind of huge workloads,
Mm.
pressures to publish, not necessarily enough time to write the things to publish, not necessarily
Right.
enough time to do the research. So then it's like, whilst I really love teaching, and I do like little bits of public outreach here as well. Like I give like usually like 2 or 3 talks a year, and I've got like some other little bits and stuff that I do. Um, that kind of side of it, I think also maybe made me fall out of love with it a little bit because
Oh, wow.
you go in to be a researcher, but then you don't have the time to do your
Right.
research. So I think it's right, like right now, I kind of feel like I have a really good life balance. And because I have the time to be passionate about my research and I have a 9 to 5, I don't, I just I enjoy it so much more than when it was something that I did 9 to 5.
Right.
Um, and I think it's a much nicer balance.
Oh, that's wonderful. Yeah. Who knows? Maybe I always thought I would retire and teach as a professor. Like that was my, at the end or maybe I would just drag myself out and dig anyway when I'm like 80 and just be like, one more artifact, like I'm working on it.
I did 2 weeks of that actual archaeological like field work
Oh, yeah.
undergrad, and it was like I remember it was like the hottest 2 weeks of the year, really great. Like we had like glove tan lines. It was so good. And then on the last day, it was just like torrential rain, and at that point, I was like, "This isn't for
Not
me.
for you. I've
This is
had a
not for
whole
me."
dig site fill in with water the day after we left.
I firmly enjoy being in the lab. I have no shame about it. I'm not somebody that you want outside digging because I'm going to complain a lot.
I agree. Do you go out and look at but you've gone to the locations, right? Where you
Yeah,
just somebody else is extricating or
I mean
leaving it in sight too.
these sites were more. I think so. They've been excavated for a long time, and like the collections are stored. There's no fresh or kind of recent excavations.
Mm.
Everything's just in storage and in the collections, which is also nice. But I did a talk at one of the sites. Uh, was it last month? What month are we in? September,
Oh,
August. Yeah. So I did in collaboration with Alison, who's the archaeological curator for Manx National Heritage, and I did a talk, and she talked all about the archaeology, the cemetery at Balladole, and all of that. And then I talked about like my work and also what I found on the skeletons.
wow.
And it was a lovely day. It was about
Thank
23,
God.
24 degrees, and you stood on this cliff, like almost like cliff kind of thing in the sun. But it was really lovely.
So was this at one of those like Keele type sites you were talking about?
Yeah, so it's so one of the sites is Balladole, so it is a like a really key site actually. So there's Alison's gonna be upset if I get this wrong, but I'm gonna try. So I think there's like Bronze Age,
Right.
Iron Age burials there, I'm gonna
Oh,
say.
nice.
And then we have an early Christian cemetery, which is what I'm looking at. And there's about, I think it's like 30, 35 individuals. And there's a Keele, which is kind of like an early Christian kind of like place of worship. And there's about, I think it's about 180 of them across the island.
Wow.
And some of them are at really remote locations. And it wasn't like a place where you would go inside and worship. It was what they think it was is that like a person of the faith, of Christian faith, would be in that Keele, and then you would come and kind of
Like visit for.
pray. Yeah, pray or do it outside as opposed to being inside.
Oh,
And it's
wow.
really exposed location, I will say. It's like right above the beach. And then also to really kind of finish it off, there was also a Viking boat burial there as well.
It's awesome.
That dates to later. So the earlier Christian cemetery, I think, is like 4th to 7th century,
Yeah.
and then the Viking boat burial is about 10th century. So you've got these like multiple layers of archaeology, all in one place.
Yeah.
And that's really quite common here, because it's a small place, where I think at the widest points we're like 33 miles long, and I think it's about 11 or 12 miles wide. So it's
Oh,
not huge.
that's the whole island?
Yeah, yeah,
Oh, so you're just crammed full of archaeology and culture and history.
yeah, kind of. Yeah. Um, so and it's and you see a lot of this like multi-period occupations around sites, because I kind of and it is a really key site, and obviously you would be able to see it from the sea. So there's the whole argument as well of, the Vikings, were they invading? Were
Yeah,
they kind of coexisting? And there's one of those sites that kind of breeds into that as well.
that's interesting. Last year I taught a big thing on Eric the Red and Leif Erikson, so the students are really going to be interested in this area. Actually, last week's guest is Lee Bayliss. He's a UK-based archaeologist. He does 3D models of
I
things that
watched I watched his episodes last
I
week.
wonder, he'd probably be pretty interested to come to the Isle of Man and do especially if it's so rich in the sites. You said right where you lived, it was like 15 minutes this way, something. That'd be wonderfully. And I wonder if we could get some sort of a collaboration between you and Lee, maybe for the society, have him come in and do a lot of 3D models, because his 3D models were in the British Archaeology magazine.
Oh wow. Yeah, no, I do remember you saying that. That's really cool,
His
actually.
focus though is as Roman Britain, like the Roman Empire. Did the Roman Empire reach?
Um, so we were always taught at school that they never came, the Romans never came here, and there's like this whole kind of mythology. So we also have like a lot of Manx like mythology and local folklore and all kinds of things. So they say that it's the weather here can be a bit strange. So it can be like glorious sunshine one minute, and then the next minute kind of like the sea mist can roll in, and you can't kind of see your hand in front of your face. It can be a bit bizarre. So there's like this whole story that Manannan's cloak protected the island from the Romans. That's what I was
Wow.
taught growing up. There's no evidence that the Romans kind of came, as
Yeah.
far as I'm aware. There's evidence of like Roman coins and things like that. But in terms of like Roman settlement,
Yeah. Yeah.
there, as far as I'm aware, there hasn't been any.
Yeah. And
Um,
that could have just been an Isle of Man person traveling somewhere to gather a Roman coin and coming
yeah,
back. That's
yeah,
so interesting.
yeah. So and especially because of how like central we are. So we're right in the middle between like England, Ireland, Scotland, and Wales.
Yeah.
Like we were a key trading port, or like key trading area in the Viking period, and all of that. So it seems a bit bizarre.
Yeah.
But as far as I'm aware, nobody's found anything concrete.
Oh, I love that. I should put you and Lee in contact with one another, though, just in general. You guys will probably have lots to talk about. So let's see here. This is the next questions. The next two questions, 3 questions, get really deep into your research. So I want to just give you the opportunity, an expose on all things Dr. Weale. So what have you discovered so far about maternal health between AD 500 to 1500 on the island?
So for the three sites that I've now done, we have three cases of neonatal rickets.
Hmm.
So these are individuals that died incredibly young, so maybe like days, weeks after birth, or maybe even,
In utero?
like kind of complications around birth as well, with vitamin D deficiency.
So
And the
can
only
you tell if they're in utero? Like, can you tell the difference if it's in utero, like in the 9th month of pregnancy or post-birth? Like, is there something that happens to the bones when it is pushed out of the birth canal that is a difference that you can detect?
so there are different kind of like destructive tests that I mentioned before that you can kind of do. But a lot of those kind of changes, as far as I'm aware, they happen kind of in the skull, and due
Mm,
to that, just the fragility of the bones, there's not they don't survive in the archaeological record.
no.
So the cases that we see, and we've got one with really advanced rickets and scurvy, so scurvy's
Oh, wow.
vitamin D deficiency.
Yeah.
So, and when you have vitamin C deficiency, your body can't produce a certain protein that helps your blood vessels maintain themselves.
Mm.
So you start to bleed, and you can see evidence of like the or like bleeding on the bone all across the
Oh,
mandible
wow.
of this infant, and it's really it's really really unique and it's really advanced. And I've kind of interpreted that, and I've spoken to other kind of specialists as well, and they've kind of interpreted that as like sucking on the thumb or sucking on something.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
it could be evidence of like breastfeeding or like, some kind of nursing, but also infants suck their thumb in utero.
That's true. Oh, wow.
It's one
Are,
of
were
the.
there, do you have citrus trees? If it's so overcast, do citrus trees grow in the UK or the Isle of Man area? Like, would they have access to like oranges, limes, lemons?
No,
No?
no,
Oh.
no. We're not too tropical, I'm afraid.
That's what I'm saying. How were most of the population not getting scurvy?
I don't know. I think that's the thing that's also really interesting. So these are the only two cases I've seen.
Oh,
Um,
interesting. Yeah.
so but also like children are so much more malleable
Mm.
to the diseases and the stresses of the time.
Yeah.
Um, So it's really interesting it's awful obviously as well, but it is also really interesting to kind of see them because they are so much more susceptible to these conditions.
Hmm.
And it does show fundamentally that some mothers were unhealthy. So
Yeah.
the skeletal populations are kind of the evidence of the individuals who didn't survive. And
Yeah.
then the dentition, so that's been taken from individuals kind of ranging in age. And they're evidence of the individuals who did survive, at least for a certain extent. I think the oldest sample is from somebody who's about 12 or 13 years old.
Yeah.
So it's interesting that, they may have experienced deficiency in utero, but they lived, excuse me, to be 12 or 13.
Yeah.
Whereas these neonatal individuals, they didn't survive that long.
That is what you just said, really just flashed something. So that's so wild. Like you said, your skeletal remains are the people who didn't survive. So did you do any type of like obviously because you're a researcher, did you do any type of parallel to like what percentage of the population were vitamin D deficient or whatever? Like how many people grew up without cause so you don't have skeletal remains? Like do you know like the population and then the population of how many skeletons you have? And that's even just the ones you found, not necessarily how many that died, that are unfound with, maybe scurvy or rickets.
So like at
Like how
the
how popular, how frequent were they
So and
malnourished?
this is why I've gone for like the multi-method kind of approach. Because what I found in my PhD research is whilst populations before industrial England, you're looking at about a 2 to 3% prevalence of rickets, like
Oh, okay.
microscopically, so what you can see on bone. But rickets is a condition where, so vitamin D deficiency presents as two conditions. It presents as rickets, which is the condition of bone growth,
Hmm.
and then osteomalacia, which is the condition of bone remodeling.
Hmm.
So within children that are growing, you see rickets, and that's because they're growing at such an advanced rate they're not able to mineralize bone properly, and you see that kind of characteristic, bowed legs that you think of when you
Yeah.
think of the industrial period and all of that kind of thing in the really severe cases. But the kind of the issue with looking at it on the skeleton is that so that individual might be deficient for 6 months in the year, and at our latitude, we have enough sunlight to maintain enough or to produce enough vitamin D on our own for about 6 months of the year. But after that, we then don't have enough sunlight. So everybody would become deficient for a certain period of time.
Oh,
And then once the sun comes out, you make enough again. So it can be quite cyclical in
cyclical.
how it
Yeah,
works.
yeah. Oh, wow.
Um,
That's interesting. So
but
if they
bone
died during the period of the 6 months
deficiency.
out, it would show. Oh,
But if they then happen to, die in a period of summer or die
yeah.
after whatever caused this deficiency has rectified itself, certainly at a macroscopic level, that evidence of deficiency might not be seen on the skeleton.
Wow.
So, but what you can see, so teeth are really different, and teeth don't remodel in the same way after they've been formed. So within the teeth, you can see episodes of deficiency. And this is something that I really saw within my PhD research, where you can kind of see almost year on year, these
Yeah.
individuals were suffering with seasonal deficiency,
Wow.
um, which is also really interesting. So you
So
can
it's
kind of see,
almost like tree rings, but in the teeth.
yeah,
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 that's
pretty much.
interesting.
And that's something that you can't see on bone. So this is why
That
I've
makes me wonder.
chosen.
So, and I'm sure I'm just tiptoeing onto something you already know. So, would that then possibly, if somebody's pregnancy ranged in the 6 months of no sun, like let's say they're 3 months pregnant when the 6 months starts, and their developmental period, the really major developmental periods range during the 6 months without as much sun, is that possibly also like those people who happen to be born at a certain time of the year? Is that also possibly leaning into the more of a rickets situation as well?
I think potentially, but also pregnancy takes quite a toll on the
Hmm.
female body. So these children that are born with deficiency, it's because their
Yeah.
mothers are deficient in something.
Yeah.
And the regular or the vitamin D pathway during pregnancy is mainly based on calcium and the
Yeah.
mineralization of that skeleton. So I think in kind of at the start of the second trimester, a skeleton has about, I think it's like a neonate, a fetal skeleton would contain, I think it's about 3, 4 grams of calcium. Um, Towards the end of pregnancy, you're looking at, I think it's about 40 grams. So
Wow.
it's huge in terms of how much they take in, and that is from their mother,
Yeah.
whether the
Yeah.
mother is consuming it or whether it's being removed from the mother's skeleton in
Wow.
order to prioritize the infant. And that's just really kind of interesting to think about. So then you think about periods when, women didn't have the kind of options around contraception and things that they have now. Women would have multiple pregnancies, often back to back. And
Which I did.
yeah, yeah.
I had 8 kids. In case you don't know me in real life, I had 8 kids almost back to back. Long-term breastfeeding, birthing at home type of person.
So when you think of that and you think of the toll that that would take on the body, it's huge. And then you think about how it works now in terms of, we know when somebody is deficient. Multiple tests are involved when a woman is pregnant, and they spot these types of things and they try and rectify it. You take away that modern clinical knowledge, and then you think about how it worked in the past.
Yeah.
And maternal health is the foundation of every population.
Yeah.
Because poor sick mothers produce sick children, and it
Yeah.
isn't just a one generation effect. So
Wow.
if you're if you're pregnant and you're pregnant with a girl, the eggs or the female gametes, they form whilst in utero.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that has the potential to
Because you
be
have all the eggs you're ever going to
transgenerational.
have in
Yeah.
utero. Yeah.
And then they mature, obviously later in life. But at that point, it's a transgenerational effect.
Yeah.
So one bad pregnancy can kind of have not just the first generation, but also a second generational effect as well, which is also kind of crazy when you think about it.
That is such a keystone concept. You know what reminds me of? They also said another keystone concept is they said populations that you can tell a population was developed when they took care of when there was evidence of healed broken femurs,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
once they were taking care of that, then that means that they were developed. And that's right up there. That's right up there for me as a keystone comment, that the maternal health is so indicative of how the generation of the population is going to turn out. Because if they're all sickly, or they're all, you know what I mean, then it's going to determine the cultural factors of how they stand up against, other communities or other even nations.
And
Wow.
like research around vitamin D deficiency has really kind of just skyrocketed, maybe in like the past 5 to 10 years as well, which really tied in nicely with my PhD. So there's this thing called all-cause mortality. So, excuse me, so you can kind of be exposed to vitamin D deficiency in utero, and there's
Mhm.
really key things that are, so your immune system is one of them, and that forms in the third trimester. And if you do not have adequate vitamin D adequate kind of vitamin
Yeah.
D pathway during that time, you can your immune system won't form properly, and it's
Wow.
something that will never recover.
Wow.
So you're kind of going through life with this not quite, almost not
Yeah.
compromised, but this not fully formed immune
Developed.
system.
Yeah.
But then also you find evidence of especially like during COVID as well. They found lots of studies that showed that vitamin D deficient people were more susceptible to the condition. They often had
Wow.
worse responses, and vitamin D receptors, which are cells that respond to vitamin D, are found as part of the immune system. So it isn't just it's not even really a vitamin actually. It's a pro-hormone that we synthesize in our skin. Or we can take in through food, so oily fish,
Yeah,
eggs.
but can your body process it without sunlight? I
Yeah,
mean, even if you eat it, because it almost makes you think when they were quarantining everybody and the lack of vitamin D was making it more of an effect on you, then the worst possible thing was cordoning everybody inside the buildings for months at a time, whereas
mhm.
opposed to being out in the sunshine.
Yeah, so you can take it in orally. So, but there's also a second. So the vitamin D absorption within the
Yeah.
intestine also needs calcium.
Mm.
So if you're also deficient in calcium,
Oh, so
then your
double
body
whammy.
isn't absorbing the vitamin D as well as it could or
Oh,
should.
yeah.
So there's three parts to the fat pathway. There's vitamin D, there's calcium, and there's phosphorus, and all
Oh,
three kind of need to be in harmony for it to work. And you can have deficiency, lack of vitamin D, lack of
yeah.
calcium. Fundamentally, it shows as the same thing, which are these skeletal markers that we see. But it is really interesting, and how it presents as well. So you can
Yeah.
see it, and there's been a lot of work done recently by Megan Brickley, Rachel Ives, really big scholars within the world of paleopathology, that have found specific areas of the skeleton. So angulation of the scapula occurs at a certain age range, or
Oh, yeah.
angulation of the coccyx or the sacrum,
Yeah, the tailbone, yeah.
um, that can happen, and and you can also see kind of certain areas of the skeleton that might be more affected than others, depending on what elements are growing at the time of deficiency. So
Wow.
you can see it. I've got individuals where you can see it horrifically in the ribs, and you can see that kind of what they call rachitic rosary or rosary. So it looks almost like prayer beads
Oh, wow.
under the skin because of how much flaring's going on in the rib cage. But you don't see anything in any of the other epiphysis in the body.
Oh,
Um, so it depends what areas are growing or changing at the time as to what elements are affected,
yeah.
because it's not a disease that is kind of doesn't have a specific area. It targets the whole skeleton.
Wow.
It's just which areas will present
Yeah.
at the time of deficiency.
Unique to the person, yeah. And you
Mm.
said that you didn't the that all the evidence was found either in the teeth or in the children, but you haven't found skeleton like a pregnant woman with osteomalacia or necessary not yet of this what you said like a 200 sample skeletal collection.
Yeah, so I by the end of this, I'll have looked at, I think it's about 100, yeah, maybe about 150. So there's the different sites have different,
Yeah.
obviously different numbers of individuals. And the biggest site is Russian Abbey, which is about 250 individuals, but a lot of those are commingled. There's only about, I think it's 25 or 30 skeletons in total that are kind of articulated for me to be able to extract any kind of, robust osteological profile from.
Mm.
Um, but even in my PhD, I looked at it's about 900 skeletons, so it was a good
Wow.
chunk. And I only found four possible cases of
Wow.
osteomalacia. And
So the body would heal itself.
it does, yeah, absolutely. So, and it becomes quite cyclical, like we said,
Yeah.
but also
But you could see it in the teeth.
so because teeth only form during childhood,
Oh,
they're
no.
kind of capsules of
Does
childhood
it rot
deficiency.
at all while you're an adult? Because, people's teeth are like rotting out of their face sometimes. Does it
Yeah,
ever affect, what I'm saying? Does it
yes.
ever pull from the already existed teeth?
So it will. So the preservation of dentition is certainly an issue, and it's a sampling issue that I've come across, but also the wear as well. So
Yeah.
because I'm interested in kind of that dyad between mother and infant, there's a
Hmm.
specific line that forms in the enamel of teeth called the neonatal line,
Oh,
and it occurs during the birth process because it is such a stressful process for everybody involved.
yeah.
It the child stops growing for that period of time, and it leaves almost like a clearly identifiable band in the enamel.
Wow.
So you can measure that from the dental enamel junction in the teeth and then reflect it back into the dentine, which is the part I'm interested in. And you can see how much deficiency, if any,
So
occurred
the
in that
dentin's the
period.
bone of the tooth, right?
The dentine's
Essentially.
the bit inside. So if you think of a tooth, you've got the enamel on the outside,
Yeah.
and you've got your dentine in the middle,
Yeah.
and then you've got your pulp chamber in the
Inside. Yeah.
center. So if you ever had a root canal,
Yeah.
that's what
Which they
drills
say
all the
not
way
to
through.
do anymore. At
I
least
don't.
over here, they say
I've
cut
not.
out root canals.
I've not suffered one.
I haven't either, but they say that if you do a root canal, that your teeth have the ability to heal themselves, and that if you do the root
They do
canal,
remodel, yeah,
yeah, and
to
so
a
it takes
certain
out the
point.
blood flow, and it will never reheal itself if you get a root canal.
Oh,
Yeah, they.
I but they do. So those are the three layers. So the dentine is the tissue in the middle, and that forms throughout childhood. So I sample the first permanent molars, because that tooth begins to form at about 30 weeks in utero, and
Oh,
finishes around the age of 10. So it's a full kind of capsule, if you like, for the good portion of the first 10 years of life, but also the most at-risk periods for deficiency.
yeah.
So the most at-risk period is post-birth and then around 18 months to 2 years. And it ties in with weaning, usually,
Oh,
and completion of weaning. So the mothers should be the source of vitamin D and calcium.
right.
If mothers are deficient, children are deficient. But then if children are weaned onto food that isn't adequate in vitamin D and or calcium, then deficiency can reoccur as well.
Oh, wow. Let me ask you a weird tooth question that's always been interesting to me. So, I think a lot of the viewers will be shocked at what a child's skull looks like that has their
Mhm.
secondary teeth still in. Have you
Yeah.
ever found, and I saw two in real life once. Have you ever come across um a skeleton of a child who had a tertiary set? It's very rare, but like where they have a third set of teeth.
I
I
haven't.
have I have
No,
seen
I've
it,
not.
and it's so weird. It's almost past the sinus line. So it's like they have their baby teeth, and then they have their secondary teeth, and then there was and one of the skeletons, it was there was a third row of a couple of teeth, not the whole set.
Mm.
They had like a third row of teeth, and who knows what would have happened if they lived out their life. And maybe I don't know if they would have lost their secondary, and then the third tooth would come in. But I've seen two skeletons like that, and it is weird looking. It is just teeth, 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 everywhere.
Children's skeletons and skulls as well can be quite interesting. So obviously you can have their kind of their first teeth and then their secondary teeth underneath. And
Yeah, I
sometimes if
think.
like if the bones kind of flaked away or things like that, you can still see the teeth in the crypts.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
and those always kind of look really weird. And pe people always find it really strange as well, like when you're showing, pictures
Oh,
or things
for
like that.
sure. I feel like they have no concept. They're like, what is going on? Like that. I mean, we know in the everyday sense that obviously there are more teeth up there for children, but I don't think people take into the outside of like dentists and academia, like what that might actually appear to be like on a fossil record or even just like an X-ray, you know?
Yeah.
It's so interesting. I'll send you a pic. I'll see if I can find a picture of some tertiary teeth and send it to you. Let me. I think. Let me see. We have about 2 minutes till our next break. And I would like to give you more than 2 minutes to answer your next question. So I'll find a tertiary tooth picture for you, and we'll reconvene in a few minutes.
Okay.
So we'll be back, folks. And I might make this a two week thing where you'll be the guest this week and the following week because I love your topic. So this is going to probably be a very long interview. So we'll just cut it into two things. So you'll be this week's, we'll do half your interview on this week's, and then so everybody else, there's going to be a part two for her on the following week as well. So okay, we'll be back, my friends. This is such a cool interview. I'm so excited to have her. So we'll see you back in a few. Welcome back. We're with Dr. Weale, and we are just deep diving into her research about the maternal health of the past. We're looking at vitamin D deficiencies of the past and lots of other cool things that are coming up as we talk more and more about it. So we're going to move on to her next question, which is, so Dr. Weale's PhD focused on vitamin D deficiency across England from AD 1000 to 1850. So what parallels or even surprises have you found when you were comparing that work to that of the Isle of Man?
So I haven't actually got to that bit yet, but and I think that's kind of also what makes it more fun,
Yeah.
because but I found things I wasn't expecting to find in my PhD research, and then I'm finding things obviously I didn't expect to find here, but that's research. Like you always find things that you don't want to find, and if you finish your research and you don't have more questions, like I don't think you've done it right, because
I
like that's
agree.
what it's supposed to be.
Mhm.
So it's kind of I went in with the idea that I wasn't going to find deficiency, or I wasn't going to find a lot of it because you we don't really see it. So,
Right,
and
right.
there's various reasons. So, if you have somebody who had a poorly mineralized skeleton in their life, whether they had rickets or they had osteomalacia, and then you bury them and you expose them to all the elements that happen in the ground during decomposition, and then you leave it for a couple of hundred or maybe even 1,000 years. Um, it's really unlikely that they're going to survive all of that time with that poorly mineralized skeleton. So then that makes
Right.
it harder to
Yeah.
identify the
Do you have
condition.
any bog mummies over there?
No, no, no.
Because that would really be a good snapshot for you.
That would. Oh. I've never seen one. But they do look really interesting.
Yeah.
But so we do. So you've already got this bias in the sense of you are looking at a condition that gives somebody a poorly mineralized skeleton. Then you
Yeah.
put them in the ground for 1,000 years, and they probably might not survive the burial environment, or they might not survive it well enough to be able to diagnose them.
Right.
So there's all these things going on in the background that make it hard to see vitamin D deficiency on a skeleton anyway. And then I went in and I was like, okay, well let's see what we can see. And then I think my prevalence rates were about 2, maybe 3% across my like early medieval and medieval population. And then cue the teeth, and we're seeing it at like 60%.
Wow. Huge jump.
And it's huge, it's massive. And it's like, so how much deficiency have we been missing
Yeah.
and just not knowing that it was there? And it could be that it wasn't kind of severe enough to work its all the way up to the microscopic kind of characteristic markers that we see of deficiency, or it could be that it was, it had healed, or it could just be that it only ever got to the microscopic level. Because you think about how deficiency, like people think these deficiencies are diseases of the past, and they're not. You know, 80, I think figures estimate roughly about 80% of the Western world are in some way vitamin D deficient, and that's, indoor lifestyles, altitude, latitude, all the different things that contribute. But it's interesting to think of it nowadays, because you think of the symptoms, you're like, oh, I feel a bit tired, I feel a little bit run down, I've got this odd muscle ache.
Yeah.
Those are symptoms of kind of like everyday life.
Yeah. Or people say
Not,
aging, you know?
yeah, they're not necessarily
Yeah.
symptoms that you would think about having this, what can
Mhm.
be a really awful disease,
Right.
or condition. But equally, you get your treatment and it figures itself out again.
Yeah. And all of a sudden you feel spry and young.
Yeah.
Yeah. It
So,
makes you wonder. So, just for the students' concept, so when she said about 60% of the finds when she found the teeth, you have to imagine, so like 50% of a find would be one in every two women. You have to realize. So, at 60% of a find with the teeth, you imagine that's 6 out of 10, or, it is a very large number. Okay. So, her research went from it being maybe 1 in 10, like in less than 1 in 10, to 6 out of 10 people, or women specifically, that had
so
the
just people. So I
people.
did, yeah. So
So
the whole
six out of
population
10,
I
that's a
did,
huge jump.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I just like to put, because sometimes, percentage, I feel like people don't really conceptualize well. They're like, wow, 60 is a big number. But think about it, 6 in every 10 people are now, are evidence to have had this. And the previous skeletal remains were giving less than 1 out of 10 people, it would be very rare. So this is a huge jump in significance for what she's talking about.
It's
Um,
also like I think it's also important to consider like the size of the population. So like it's about 160 individuals,
mhm.
skeletal wise,
Yeah,
and there's like 2 or 3% of those. And then the teeth, I did like 30 teeth,
yeah.
for one of the populations, and it was just over half of those that showed evidence of vitamin D deficiency. And that was like the early medieval period.
So two
And
or
then,
3% is 2 or 3 out of 100 people, just so everybody's following along. So that's
yeah.
a very, very small section of population when it's a small civilization. 2 or 3 in a billion is still a significant amount of people, but that's not the population we're dealing with now.
Yeah, so all archaeological kind of populations, at least in my experience, are all, kind of hundreds, like all the ones that
Yeah,
I've
yeah.
worked with.
Well, just so
Um,
the viewers are following
yeah,
along with the
no,
numbers, yeah.
absolutely. And then you kind of fast forward to like the industrial period. So in my PhD research, I only had one industrial population, and it was 141 individuals skeletally.
Was it
And so
in Britain or was it in the Isle of Man?
So Britain, so
Britain,
it's
okay.
in England, and it was, I think the prevalence rate was about, I think it was about 20% off the top of my head, skeletally.
Yeah, yeah.
And
Which
then
is significant.
yeah, absolutely, so a huge jump.
20 out of 100 as opposed to 1 or 2 out of 100.
And then when it got to the teeth, so I sampled 11 teeth in total. So I'll get a much smaller number, just
Yeah.
because the teeth were, introduction of sugar, poor dietary health,
Yes.
poor dental health. The teeth were a lot more, there was a lot more wear and tear and disease on them than what there was in earlier periods. 91% in
Wow.
the industrial period,
That
and
is unbelievable. I
just
mean, it's
that
believable,
jump,
obviously, yeah.
like just that jump is
That's huge.
crazy.
So they were doing
Um,
better off in the pre-industry, pre-packaged time
In
period.
terms of deficiency, definitely. But it's one of those where like, people always talk about it as well. They're like, oh, there's such a jump in the prevalence of deficiency in the industrial period, and there absolutely is macroscopically when you're looking at the skeletons. But when you're looking at the teeth, 60% to 90%, yes, that's a
Yeah.
good chunk, absolutely. But deficiency is much more common than I think people like researchers like myself thought it was in the past.
Yeah. Now, when you were doing industrial, was it only to the 1800s or all the way up until current?
No, so it was one cemetery, and I think it was open for about 15 to 20 years. So it
But what
wasn't
time period?
completely exhaustive. Eight, 1843 is jumping out in my
I,
head. It's around
I
that kind of time.
I wonder if I'd love to see, because I'm just so wildly interested in everything you're talking about. Also would love to see a snapshot from, if anybody else here is doing similar research, of the you know how they're doing fortified cereals and stuff like that, where
Mm,
it's just, I wonder how that impacts the same type of levels. I would love to see, like, because they're not really eating foods that would naturally give that type of bolstered um, health or help. So I wonder with the advent of like fortified foods, or like like literally just taking a standardized pill vitamin. I wonder how that affects it, or if it's still just not as good as natural sources. I would love to I'd love to pair you with somebody who does something similar, but in like the modern, like now,
yeah.
and just see how those numbers line up.
It is interesting because,
Now
like I
I'm on
said,
the hunt
people
for my next guest. Now,
people think that these are diseases of the past, but they're not.
yeah,
They're
yeah.
they're very much, and
I am
especially,
surprised though about scurvy still being around though.
yeah.
I don't know what's going on in Florida because I live in Florida, and there's lots of orange trees here. And you would imagine that California and Florida have lots of oranges, but I haven't bought orange juice in such a long time, unless it's like a concentrate or something, because a gallon of orange juice is $9 right now, which is
Wow.
outrageous, especially since we live in the Sunshine State. So it doesn't even, there's an orange on our license plate. It doesn't even make sense. Like normally, just to give you a, like milk right now is under $3. It's like 2.50 for a gallon of milk. So $9 of orange juice is outrageous. So I don't know what's going on with that, but it almost makes you wonder if, I feel like I'm gonna have scurvy soon if I get some citrus sources in. But it's because of like I just refuse to spend $9. But but bags of oranges are pretty cheap. It doesn't make sense. There's something going on in the orange juice industry around here that is, I could buy a bag of mandarin oranges, which I do frequently, for like two something if I go to Aldi's, which I think you guys have Aldi's over there. And orange juice, a gallon of orange juice at Aldi's, which is considerably cheaper, is $9. It doesn't make any sense. Who is pricing the orange juice here?
I
And that
think it,
is,
but it also looks at kind of like so a lot of when you look at the demographic of nutritional
yeah,
disease in England that currently, it's always quite interesting because a lot of it is like inner city, like housing estates and kind of there's a demographic that goes with it.
yeah,
Um, so I always find that quite interesting. And then when you look at the costs and the like the economic spread
yeah,
of the disease as well, it's people can't afford the
yeah,
healthier food options. And I remember reading some kind of crazy figure a few years ago that something like 40,000 children in England had been treated for vitamin D and
wow,
or vitamin C deficiency. And I was like, this is crazy.
yeah,
When it's something as simple as having fruit, or like you said, having some orange juice, or
yeah,
and it is the diseases. It's not so much vitamin D deficiency, but like vitamin C deficiency. It's a disease of a poor diet,
yeah,
um, and that's something that is absolutely preventable.
yeah.
Um, but given the way that kind of the world is turning, they're coming back, and it is quite concerning.
Yeah. Let me ask you a bone question that I don't know the answer to. Do people who have childhood rickets or adult, osteomalacia have a higher possibility of like osteopenia and osteoporosis as well? Or are they just two vastly different things?
So I mean, osteopenia, osteoporosis, that's like thinning of the bone and of like for whatever reason. I don't know enough about that side of things to be able to kind of commit to a solid answer, if you
Right, right,
like.
right.
But if you've got a poorly mineralized skeleton and you've
Yeah,
got you know, precursors to multiple complications because of that,
yeah,
it is going to make things harder as you kind of transition through life, especially as women, because obviously like post menopausal women,
yeah,
that estrogen just kind of falls off a cliff.
yeah.
And that really changes our bone health and our bone and our skeleton in general, making it much harder. Um,
Because what I was thinking about while you were talking is like how they were like, it's just like at first it's just like feelings of lethargy, so maybe you don't get it checked out. But then, and we don't seem to see a lot of circumstances, unless it's like bowing bones, but we don't see a lot of circumstances or documented circumstances of osteomalacia. But we are seeing a huge uptick in osteopenia and osteoporosis. So I wonder if it's just because it's gotten bad enough, or it's a test that we're looking for. Like you said, especially with perimenopausal or menopausal women, it's something that we know to look out for because of the estrogen dropping off a cliff. And I wonder if it all ties in, if we're not really as far away from a vitamin D deficiency as we've imagined, and we're just not testing for osteomalacia unless it's like visible, and then we're seeing, but we are testing for osteopenic levels and osteoporotic, markers. And so we're saying, oh, you got osteoporosis, you got osteopenia, but I wonder if it's all been a lifelong thing. See, your research really makes me think about all these different things. It's really, and it's the way you present it is really good too, because other people may just present a list of facts, just reading it, and they just go through it and we're like, yeah, great. But the type of stuff that you're touching on is really just the precipice of not only ancient times, but like now. I mean, there's so many questions that can come from off of your research. You really should have a team. I'm serious. Like you should have a team, and then like you have one person who's looking at current levels to cross multiple, to cross connect the dots of what about after the introduction of fortified foods and stuff like that, and then another team member who's I mean, really, and especially because because right now you have relatively small sample size, as in the broad scope of things. If you could get a team to get you, because the higher the numbers, the more reliable the data, the more bones you can get to. I mean, you really should think about, I'm serious, heading a team of people where you have them in each of the different avenues checking out all the good stuff. Because are there many people who are in your specific specialty where you live?
No.
That's what I'm saying. You need a team.
So I'm really the only person that's actively like doing work on the collections, the human remains collections anyway, on the Isle of Man. But it's I'm a big fan of and kind of working within a network of people. So there are people like various institutions across the world, there's a few of us that do kind of similar things, and it's nice because we all kind of know each other. And it's really good to talk about and stuff like that. But also I'm a big fan of like sharing that knowledge and sharing that information. Because what could be, kind of a cause for something here might be something completely different.
Absolutely.
So, and it's really interesting. So like Barbara Veselka, who's she's amazing. She did a lot of her PhD research in the Netherlands, and she found gender differences or like biological sex differences in the prevalence of deficiency. And it was because the girls were primarily kept inside, whereas the boys were outside.
Less vitamin D.
Yeah.
Wow.
And some other areas as well have found other things and kind of like gendered or biological sex differences within the prevalence of these conditions too. So it's really interesting stuff to then see, because we all, and these are the things that really interest me about these types of diseases, is that people are exposed. There's these whole theories behind, like the life course theory, about how everybody kind of interacts with these different variables within their life and how it influences their ability, their risk or their chances of developing different diseases. And you think about 2 to 3% of the population having vitamin D deficiency, like clearly on their skeleton.
Yeah.
So the other 97% don't. So really, we're talking about the minority here within that population. So what was different about them?
Mm-hmm.
Why did they have a more severe level of deficiency? And was it were they potentially sick and they were kept inside for longer periods of time than others?
Yeah.
Did they have a different role? And that's something else that you have to be interested in, because it's like, all right, so we've got this, we've got these stats, we've got these figures that say this population had this many, this population had this many, but I want to know the why.
Exactly. Because you
Because
have the
that,
is, but you don't have like the why. What are the reasons leading up to it? What this particular demographic? What is the demographic even? You know,
yeah, absolutely. And when you look at,
you need a team. I'm
yeah,
just
and
saying.
even when you look at, work done in areas where there's ample sunlight,
Yeah,
they are still seeing evidence of vitamin D deficiency. So why?
yeah.
What are the causes behind it? Is it clothing? Is it multi-story buildings? Is it, whatever trades they might have been doing?
I wonder if
Um,
there are genetic markers that just certain people just don't process vitamin D. You
it's
know,
interesting.
I would be. I would. I don't know. That's what I'm saying. If anybody has grants and stuff they want to throw at Dr. Weale, I would recommend it because I think she needs it literally the team because right now we're kind of limited to the scope of what you have personally hunted down these answers. You've collaborated with a few professionals, but if your vision of what to look for and your knowledge of this particular subject, if you could direct this person to research this, like maybe even if you had students, like graduate students that are honing in on it, I think you need a grant and a team because then we could spread your scope down, like I need these answers for this thing. So this person looks at this, and then you're the person who looks at all of the combined research and makes sense of it, as well as, obviously doing your own research. But I mean, I'm not just saying this. I really believe that you need to lead a team of people under you.
It is interesting because it draws parallels as well with, like, we see, kind of across the world that female health or women's health isn't necessarily where we want it to be in terms of the care that we receive,
It is ignored. Everybody,
Um,
it's a joke that it is like you're just having female problems, and then they send you on your way.
yeah. It's,
Like,
like it's kind of, oh, just calm down, or
yeah, you're
oh,
hysterical, you
yeah.
know.
And it's
That's
so infuriating. And but actually, we're not where we want to be in terms of women's health, and
yeah,
even being able to talk to your doctor about all whatever you're kind of experiencing.
yeah,
And then we look at the data behind a lot of medical studies. They don't maybe include women, or
no,
they don't focus on women.
yeah.
You know,
Most samples are done. Testing's done on men.
yeah, absolutely. So like the data isn't there as well. And
Hmm.
then, even kind of the prescriptions for paracetamol, ibuprofen, the recommended dosage, and there's so much. There is a gender data gap in
Yeah,
modern periods, like
I feel
now.
like the only thing they've done well on separating is like mercury levels. It's like for men, women, and children. Everything else, it's like, oh, cancer medicine. I don't know. Give them the men's version of it.
It's crazy. So
Yeah,
there's also gender, or like, sex data gaps in archaeology as well. And
yeah.
I think that's the other side of it. Because like I said before, maternal health is the foundation of every population. So
Keystone
surely,
concept right there.
so surely it makes sense to look at it and
Yeah,
see.
yeah,
But equally, paleopathology of children is something that's really come on since about the 70s. I think, if I remember way back to like my master's level classes, they were kind of really disregarded for a really long time. And then, a lot of hard work and dedication by many people have kind of come in and realized that, children are influenced by their environment so much more because they're growing and they're developing in these environments. They're being molded by them, and they hold much more of a record than adult skeletons might do because they're more resistant.
yeah.
So that's the other interesting thing about it.
I love it. Let me ask you one more question before we break for this week. Remember, Dr. Weale is going to be the following week's guest as well. And we're also, I want to say now and then also at the end, that we are going to include some images of things that she's talking about after the end of this. So make sure you watch the episode all the way to the end. And what something Dr. Weale would like me to mention, and I'm going to say it twice, is that we are going to be including images of human skeletal remains. So if you do not want to see the end of this, sign off, because there will be images of human skeletal remains as well. Let me ask you one more question. How do you identify the evidence of vitamin D deficiency in skeletal remains, which you did a great job of explaining, and what does it reveal about the lifestyles, the historic lifestyles? So I think you've done an excellent job of it, but I'd like to know about the lifestyles a lot more too.
Well, the skeleton stuff is really interesting, because so depending on the age of deficiency as well,
Yeah.
so you can see. So think about how you would see a femur, and if you've got a femur that's not
I
mineralized
have a
properly,
femur next to me,
okay.
but it's not human.
So if you've got
It's a horse femur. Isn't that crazy? Femur.
kind of does the same type of thing. Like,
Yeah.
so you've got a bone that's not mineralized properly, and it's
Femur.
the precursor to bone is cartilage. So that cartilage is quite rubbery in its sense, and quite it's kind of, think of it kind of, it's like a rubbery structure. So the bone mineralizes as part of that. But if it's not mineralized correctly, it's mineralized really poorly, you're putting weight on it, it's going to bow, and it's going to bow outwards or inwards, depending on different things. So femurs, which are the thigh bone, they tend to bow forwards, so they tend to bow outwards forwards. So you can kind of see
inward,
that
but
they've got kind of like this S shape almost. Tibias, which are the bones in the bottom of the leg, they tend to bow kind of like S's, like that.
Oh, yes.
So if you see deficiency in the legs, it occurred around the time that they were walking. And I have seen a few cases where you can see it in their arms, so you can see it in their radius and their ulna.
So that from crawling?
From crawling, yeah.
Wonderful.
So you can kind of get a gist. So you can't see on the bone, really, at what age deficiency occurred. I could tell you that it happened, but I couldn't tell you kind of the age. I can't give you the tight age estimations that you can in the teeth.
Right.
Apart from in these cases, so if you can see it in somebody's arms, you can be pretty, kind of confident that that occurred when that individual was crawling, as opposed to when they were walking.
Yeah.
And sometimes you can see it in both, so that could be evidence of multiple bouts of deficiency. I have seen one case where it was just in the arms, and then there was no evidence of it at all.
So it rectified itself by the time they were walking.
Yeah, or maybe it just didn't present to the level where bowing could happen.
Right.
But it think about how broad the symptoms can be for so many conditions that we have. People and their skeletons are also going to react differently to potentially the same condition. And that's kind of quite idiosyncratic. So whilst the cause might be the same, depending on what these people are exposed to, depends on how it might present on their skeleton. So there's some arguments as well out there that babies that are swaddled, if they've got vitamin D deficiency, it could potentially change the shape of their ribs.
Wow. That is
because their skeletons are much softer and more malleable because they're not mineralizing properly. And that's another area that's quite interesting.
I think that, don't they say that like especially in children when the bones are really building, that like robust jumping and impact helps strengthen the bones? But wouldn't that be why the bones are S-ing in a rickets type situation?
I mean they're bowing because the biomechanics or the weight, they're not able to support it, so it's
imagine if they were like jumping like big distances, like the impact would probably be more so like maybe a child with a sedentary lifestyle wouldn't display it as much as a perhaps active child who's like running and jumping and climbing trees and stuff.
But this is where kind of like the life course idea comes into it. So if you're somebody with kind of like rickets and you're sitting for long periods of time, you might see changes in the spine or in the or in the sacrum.
You
would in the long bones.
That is so wildly interesting. You know what that kind of reminds me of? I don't know if what I'm going to say next is ridiculous, but I think that they've seen, the people who are like addicted to the video gaming and they're wearing headsets all the time. I think they've seen an imprint on the skull of headphones from so long
wow.
of a time. I'm not sure if it goes away or what, but I think that they have seen marks on skulls. I've read something about it. I haven't personally followed it to it, but I know that my oldest son Dante has looked into it, and he said that he believes it's temporary. But yeah, supposedly, because I mean, by the time you're old enough, your skull is like rigid, the sutures are set. But as a child, if you're wearing headphones all the time, you're staying indoors, you're not getting sunlight, and you're wearing, a headset. I think that much to your point, it also kind of leaves its imprint on the skeletal remains. Wildly interesting stuff we're talking about here. So we are going to come back next week with her as well, because I felt like this conversation is too good to cram into one episode, and two, I really like to hear everything that she fleshes out with the questions. So guys, definitely come back, definitely comment, and say if you don't mind. Again, there will be skeletal remains at the end of this episode that I'm going to put up on the screen. So if you don't want to see skeletal remains, sign off as soon as we bid you adieu. But if you would like to see the pictures, she's going to send me some images, and I'm also going to hunt down some photos of children's teeth on the skull if you're interested in looking at that. And I'm pretty sure I can hunt down a tertiary level of teeth too, which is just wild looking. There's been a lot of weird theories before people understood what they were looking at with the teeth. So I'd love for you to see it and see what it's normal. But guys, I've had a wonderful time with her this week. Please stay tuned. Please watch her episode next week as well, which is also going to come out Monday at noon in EDT time. So thank you so much, Marie, because this is like great stuff. Like I said, guys, if anybody is looking to put a team together for her, or the finances, grants, and stuff like that, please reach out to her, because she is somebody that you need to invest in, both your interest, your time, and your money, or even museums and stuff like that. So phenomenal. You've been a phenomenal guest. So we will see you next week. Thank you so much. And we are going to have just even more stuff to talk about next week. That'll be incredibly cool, incredibly fun, and will really get your mind thinking and asking questions. See, that's what's very interesting about her as a guest, is it really gets you to think and posit more questions that you want answered. And it makes you more interested in, like, what's the next thing she's going to come up with? What's the next development in her research? So thank you again, guys. Remember that the adventure is not only what has happened in the past, but it is how we can flesh it out into the future. It's our understanding. And remember, we want to be lifelong students, because there's so much to learn. There's no way we could fit it all into one lifetime. So thank you again. Thank you for watching Bannworth Academy Ancient News, and we will see you next week. Bye-bye.